Hello, this is Catherine Marie, and you are listening to Long COVID Real Talk podcast. Today we have a special treat. We have Renee with us, who is also a long hauler. Renee, thank you for coming on the show.
Happy to
It's
be here.
very nice to meet you. So before we get started into the long COVID stuff, why don't you tell us what your life was like before long COVID?
Okay, so before long COVID, was and still am retired from a career in medical administration and public health. And I had an very active life. We built a house in 1919, in 2019 to 2020, moved in just before the pandemic, literally a month before the pandemic hit.
Wow.
We lived here within the confines of the pandemic. I was just lived my life and was very active. I'm a photographer at this point and was out doing a lot of photography outside and, carrying on as always. And then Christmas time of 2022, I developed COVID, ironically from going to a doctor's office. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
On top of that, it was an ear, nose, and throat specialist who you would think would know better, right? Anyway, um, I developed COVID and went through the usual course, took Paxlovid, started feeling better. Excuse me. Started feeling better after the usual 10 days, but not back to my old self. I never, ever returned to my old self for any period of time. I went and saw my wonderful primary care physician about 3-4 weeks out, and she said, "Well, according to the definition, you don't have long COVID yet.
You probably
No,
will.
you keep that in mind." While I got better, I never fully recovered. The 6-month point, I had a neurological incident that one of my eyes developed temporary blindness,
Oh my goodness.
an illness called amaurosis fugax.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to see my ophthalmologist right away. She looked at me for 5 minutes and said, "No, you're going to the emergency room. You may be having a stroke. You go there right now."
Wow.
And I was worked up, admitted, spent a week in the hospital, both my local hospital and then Mass General. I live in Massachusetts. And they, I had a great team of neurologists. I mean, like it's a teaching hospital. There were 6 neurologists talking to me every day.
Right.
And they could not come up with a cause for this happening. Finally, my wife, non-clinician, but a doctor, has a doctorate in education, she figured it out that I had long COVID and that I probably had a microclot that went to my eye, luckily, actually, as opposed to my brain. And that was the kind of start of a downhill trend. From there on, I developed a variety of diagnoses, which are kind of traditional with long COVID: shortness of breath, post-exertion malaise, brain fog. In addition, I also developed, some neurological stuff like essential tremor, and I ended up with coronary artery disease and having 3 stents placed in my coronary arteries because I got all occluded in my arteries. And I had, had coronary testing before I had COVID, and I was not 90% occluded in 3 arteries.
Right. I'm sure.
So, in one sense, they went in, they put the 3 stents in. The cardiologist was not convinced that, he said, "We're going to do this procedure, we'll do the catheterization, you're going to just feel great." And I'm going, I'm not so sure about that. we ended up having a fierce discussion with a coronary staff person, a cardiology staff person, I should say. And fortunately, a couple of months later, when I was being retested, they had the grace to say, oh, well, I guess this is long COVID that you have. And I'm sure that is the experience of many people, is fighting all the way.
Yeah. And with your background in with healthcare, I mean, you understand the logistics and the nuances more than most.
Well, I'm fortunate of having had that professional experience. I'm going to move to the other room here because my wife is busy working and stuff. So if that's okay. Sorry
Yeah.
for the interruption.
This okay.
This is life,
We get to do whatever we want in this podcast. It's fine.
Okay. So yeah, that's was very helpful because I know a lot of doctors, some of whom are personal friends, and got lots of, care. I have a wonderful PCP who's been with me every step of the way. And yeah, so I'm still now 2 years out. And while I have recovered somewhat, but there is persistent cognitive dysfunction and there's still some shortness of breath. I have to pace myself all day long. If I do too much, what I literally fall to pieces and I can't do anything. I just have to stop for an hour, hour and a half, do nothing. And then I'll revive a little. So that's,
So thank you for all of those details.
yeah,
So
I'm sorry if I
no,
didn't mean to go on so long.
No, that's great. You answered all of the first 5 questions. It's great. So the other thing I wanted to know is just how is your life different now?
Okay, so my life is different in a couple of significant ways. One is that prior to having COVID, I was out walking a minimum of 4 miles a day, usually 5 to 6. I live in a semi-rural area of Western Massachusetts, and unfortunately, I built a house in an area where there's a natural preserve, so you can walk for miles there. And as a photographer, I've got a couple of projects going. So I would be out walking around doing that. I'd have a busy life running errands, staying busy, seeing friends, working on different kinds of things around the house. And we landscaped the area around the house into an extensive natural meadow. Excuse me. So that's all native flowers. And so that's been a big project that my wife led. So yeah, so I was, had a very active, was in pretty good shape.
Mhm.
Now I could get by on like 7.5 to 8 hours a night of sleep. No, I never sleep less than 9 hours, sometimes 9.5, 10 hours. I have rearranged my life so that I don't do things in the morning. I allow myself to sleep until I wake up because it's the only way I get enough rest. I pace myself and I never take on more than a couple of tasks a day. And by tasks, I mean things like going to the store to buy groceries, maybe going to the library or running another errand, maybe if the weather's nice, taking a short walk of a mile to a mile and a half. I did have to give up certain types of photography that carry heavier equipment, but where I just couldn't carry it anymore. It would wear me out. My social life has become somewhat restricted because we're very, very careful. I do not want to get COVID again. At my age, I'm 79. I don't know what the outcome of that would be.
Great. By the way, I hope I look good when I'm 79.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Until recently for a year about a year and a half, I was unable to do the kind of financial work around keeping track of our finances, retirements, and stuff like that. I could barely cope with it. Fortunately, I had people helping me to do that because what I used to be able to do and did professionally for part of my life, couldn't do. I could not function. My mind just wouldn't go there, couldn't concentrate. So yeah, it's been a pretty significant change. And I think the biggest aspect of it has been coming to terms with that change and understanding, at least for me, it's probably permanent in that I think I'm going to get better. I did have, actually, in October, I had a month where I felt I was 95% of the way back.
Mhm.
I said, oh, finally, this is I'm finally gonna get through long COVID. And then I crashed.
Mm.
And I'm working my way back from that crash at the beginning of November. Not there yet, still struggling with a lot of stuff. One thing that I did find helpful, which maybe would be helpful to listeners, is that I did see a speech pathologist and worked with her as much as medical insurance and conditions would allow.
Right.
And one of the things that she said to me, she had been practicing for 25, 30 years and treated a lot of concussion victims. And she said that her experience was that people with long COVID presented very similarly in terms of cognitive function to people who had concussions, severe concussions, and they kind of went through the same process.
Yeah.
And, that was helpful. It didn't cure me and make my mind go back to what it was, but it kind of helped me restart a little bit. Sorry, I had to move to another room and I'm checking to see if the heat pump went on. And so I'm chilly.
Complete chilly out there.
Yeah, we're having a cold spell here.
Oh.
Going up to a high of 35 today.
I think this morning it was 43 when I dropped my daughter off at school, and I was freezing. But I've gotten so thin-blooded out here now. I used to be much more tough.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you go to those warm climates.
That's true. That's true. So the last couple things. Do you have any tips or tricks that you've learned to get along? And then, yeah, that's first.
Okay, so I'm just speaking from my own experience.
Right.
One thing I've learned is I don't push. I try not to push. And you're talking to a formerly very type A person.
Mm-hmm.
Part of my career, I ran large medical organizations. And it was long, hard, busy, stress-filled days. And now I do everything I can to reduce stress and not push myself. And I'm lucky. I'm in a position where I can do that. I'm retired. And, we're okay, financially, at least for the present, who knows, from the world the way it is. I have younger friends who have long COVID in this, they've got kids, they've got a job, they're struggling, just to maintain. Yeah, I rest as much as I can. I do say physically active because you need to do that. I don't want the rest of my body to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would. I'm sorry. No, here's a good example. I lost track of the question.
Oh, that's okay. And so I was just talking about tips and tricks of things that you've come up with that have helped you make it through or adapt to life with long COVID.
I think, it's a funny thing. One thing that I started doing about a year into long COVID was I adapted what I call a gratefulness practice. And this is in the context of my having been a meditator for the last 20, 25 years. And with long COVID, I found I could no longer meditate. I couldn't get the concentration that I needed. My mind just would not do that. And having practiced for a long time and having been a practicing Buddhist for a long time, I turned to gratefulness as may sound odd to people, but I found that by looking at and appreciating what I was grateful for, what I had in this life, even with long COVID, that it gave me the emotional and spiritual strength to live with this. And I found it, for me personally, very helpful. It doesn't mean I don't have my ups and downs and I don't get, ever depressed or frustrated or whatever. Of course, all of these things happen. But if you focus on what is working in your life, what you have to be thankful for, then and think about that and focus your life around that, you come to appreciate that. Sometimes that's just simply nature. Again, I'm very grateful for the fact that I have a wonderful spouse and a good relationship. It's things like that. I'm just grateful that I have a house to live in and I get to eat food every day, and I have friends and family. I have people who take care of me. So it's focusing on this aspect of life as opposed to focusing on, oh, look at me. God, I'm screwed. I used to be able to do this. I could do that. Can't participate in this. I don't see people, da 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 da. Yeah, it's easy to go down that road, and believe me, I've done it at various points. But I would say, that has been one major thing besides pacing myself and being restful. I do something, I get up in the morning, it was a very slow morning, as you know I said I can't do anything in the morning for the call. And I do what I need to do that day. First, earlier in the day, yes, for me early, and pace myself. When I get tired, well, maybe I won't run that other errand. I'll just go home.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe I won't walk a mile and a half today. I'll just walk a half.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll just have leftovers tonight. I'm not going to cook them
Mhm.
if I'm too tired.
Yeah.
And that helps. One other practical thing that seems to be helping with the cognitive dysfunction is that I started taking creatine, a 5-gram dose, which is kind of standard dose of creatine powder, mixing it in with a shake.
Mhm.
For a couple of reasons. One is that it's good for your bone health, your body, and musculature. And I've got some skeletal muscular problems also coming from this. So I won't get into a long thing, but having long COVID led to a return of a prior injury that led to on a walk, my tripping and falling flat down on my face because I had foot drop and tearing my rotator at 3 places. Yeah, and it's only because of long COVID, because I wasn't able to do the exercises I used to do to keep myself in shape. So,
Mhm.
it kind of all fits together. Anyway, the creatinine helps with the restitching of those tears.
Mhm.
And it also apparently helps with mood and mental acuity.
Okay.
So I've talked to several people who swear by it. Other people, I don't know whether it will work for you. I haven't had the kind of experience that some people have had of like, oh, this is like, wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I found it helpful.
Okay. Well, that's good. I have some myself. I think I don't take it as regularly as I should. It's not one of my regular ones, but I have it. So I'll have to
Yeah,
try to do that a little more frequently.
it needs to be a regular thing, like
Yeah.
at least 5 days a week, every day or every day if you can.
Okay.
And you got to drink a lot of extra water.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get dried out, and that's no fun.
No. Are there any take home pearls or anything that you want to say, just like parting words to other people that are long haulers? And also, is there any way that you prefer to be reached if anyone wants to reach out to say hello?
Yeah, people can reach me by email. You have my email address.
Okay. Help the description of the podcast then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the best way.
Okay.
I don't always answer the phone or want to talk to somebody at points, and I get too many political texts.
Yeah.
I don't want any more texts. Email is good, and frankly, it allows me control.
Yes.
Then I can respond when I'm able to respond. Speaking of things I would say is, as bad as it seems, it can be worse and it can be better. And you just have to stay with it and work through it every day. Every day is a new day. Every day you just keep plugging forward. Some days are better than others.
Mhm.
On a certain level, I have come to acceptance of this may be the rest of my life. And that's probably easier for me because it's 79. It's not like the rest of my life is going to be 40 years. if I was in my 20s or 30s or 40s, I might have a very different perspective. So I don't, want to tell everybody to go out and, be like me. I come from a certain kind of position, but yeah, it's just one foot in front of the other. That's all you have to do, just one foot in front of the other every day. And,
Like,
you'll get
really good advice. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Do you have any other last minute things before we close out?
probably not until after we hang up. Then I will.
Yeah, it's not always the way.
Oh, by the way,
We can always have you back too. Like we can do
sure.
whatever we want. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And thank you. Thank you for doing this. I listened to the, other talks and stuff, and it's really helpful, which actually reminds me of something that depending on your choice of social media, if you decide to participate in that,
Huh.
there are a lot of really good feeds that there's a lot of really solid information and people keeping you up to date as to what is going on in terms of the virus, both epidemiologically and just in general. There's a couple of people that I follow that I think are good. There's Caitlin Rivers. She's an epidemiologist she's great. She gives regional forecasts for all respiratory diseases and other public health emergencies. There's I'm forgetting her name, but she has a newsletter, Your Local Epidemiologist. She's good. There's an emergency room doc in Boston, Samuel Faust, who has a blog called Inside Medicine. He's very, very good, very, very smart, and really knows what he's talking about. And not, he's very humble, not at all arrogant. The Sick Times.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
It's got a really long, things like SARS, COVID V, which is on Blue Sky and on Threads, and they're good. I can't remember all the others, but those are the main ones that I read regularly to keep up with what's going on. And then the other thing yes, I totally forgot to mention this, is that I did go down to the long COVID clinic at Yale University a few times and saw Dr. Sanders there and the physician assistant that works with her. And that was helpful. She's geared to a different population than me. But it was helpful to see her. She does a really extensive job in terms of interviewing you and diagnosing you and figuring out stuff. But the other thing I would suggest is if there is some kind of long COVID clinic near where someone lives and they can get into it because their insurance covers it or it's available, whatever, I think that's worth doing. The one thing that people weren't able to do is to work with me individually, extensively to develop a treatment plan.
Right.
And I'm still looking for that. There's not a lot of that around. There's a few places in Florida. I think a place out in California, I think connected with the Scripps Institute. I'm not sure. And there is a long COVID clinic in Boston that I'm starting to look at. It's a long drive for me. And there's in terms of change of life, driving to Boston before, pain in the neck, 2.5 hours. The traffic's terrible. Okay, maybe I park a little outside and take the train in. Can't do that now.
Yeah. I think in Boston, pretty bad.
I've had to drive into Mass General several times.
I remember once I lived there briefly, and one time I was on the highway and I was going 5 or 10 miles over the speed limit, and I was in the second to left lane, and people were passing me like I was going 5 miles an hour. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm at a point in my life where I don't trust my reflexes to respond adequately. And so, I tend to drive the speed limit. I don't go any faster. I also know the physics of what happens to you once you go over 65, not that 65 is going to do you any good. And so, yeah, everybody passes me. Everybody.
Yeah.
I
So
said, it's
still,
okay. I'm gonna get there too. And
right?
you know what? I'm probably gonna pull up about 2 or 3 cars behind you, even though you went by me at 20 miles an hour faster than me,
Probably, yeah.
because you're gonna get slowed down at some point. So yeah, the accessibility issue is really big in terms of long COVID
Yeah,
for people.
I agree.
We could go on and on, but
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for all of the tips and take-home pearls for your fellow long haulers. We all appreciate it very much.
well, thank you for having me, and good luck, everyone. Now just hang in there, stick with it. We're all in this together, and maybe someday other people will benefit from our experience in sharing this. Let's hope so.
I hope so.
All right. Give me a
Well,
call
thank you,
anytime.
everybody. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk again real soon. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.